Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaboration. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another great episode of Partnership for Profits. I am Will Brooks, your host, and we have a guest today who is all about helping entrepreneurs harness the power of podcasts, much like we do. But Dustin Riechmann, he does it from the other side of the mic. Dustin is the CEO of Seven Figure Leap, where he helps business owners get booked on podcasts to build authority, credibility, and trust. His system is designed to convert conversations into clients, creating unstoppable relationship pipelines, without the heavy lift of running your own show. I can't wait to get into this conversation with you, Dustin, because it's so close to my heart as far as what we do in our business. Just kind of flipped a little bit.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, man. I'm glad you got some time to come in and chat with me today.
I'm stoked to be here. You know, Partnerships for Profit. It's like my whole business model, like you said, maybe on the other side of the mic. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun stuff to share and some insights for everyone listening.
Absolutely. So before we get too deep into the conversation, just tell people out there what Seven Figure Leap is and what you guys do for people.
Yeah. So Seven Figure Leap, we focus on the podcast guesting side of the world. So we help experts who have a story to tell build seven-figure brands by using podcast guesting sort of as an evangelization tool. So we help them get really clear about what they offer, the transformation they provide, and we help them get on these platforms to tell their story, teach, love on people, coach, and attract their ideal clients in that way.
Awesome. So what we do is we develop and produce podcasts for business owners, and then we help get guests on. We produce their shows for them. So we're always looking for guests. So it's very in line with what you guys are doing, and they're using it as a tool, it's the ultimate networking tool. Podcasting really is.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. If you get an audience, that's the cherry on the sundae. But it's not really about getting millions and millions of listeners. If you can find those 1,000 people that are really into what you're doing, that's a gold mine. So what was your aha moment that kind of made you realize that guesting could be as powerful or maybe even more powerful than running your own show? Talk to me a little bit about that, how that came about, how you kind of figured this out.
Sure. Well, the short answer is meat sticks, as you maybe didn't expect, but
like Slim Jims.
Yeah, but healthier. So I was an engineer for many years. I became a marketing consultant, and then in that marketing period, that consulting period of my life, I formed this business partnership with this company that is called Fire Creek Snacks.
Okay.
And it's basically a better for you meat stick. And so we were kind of off to the races, 2018, 2019, until, it's like record stop 2020, where we could no longer sell meat sticks the way that we were by sampling and traveling to trade shows and doing all that stuff.
Right.
And so summer 2020, as a rabid podcast consumer that was even more rabid, stuck at home with kids and a wife and not be able to leave the house, I started to notice, hey, I'm listening to all these podcasts. All these founders are being interviewed. Some of these companies that we were trying to model in our own e-com business. I was like, I wonder if I could do that. And so I pitched a show, got on as a guest, talking about our brand and how we were bringing this stuff online in a time of COVID and all that. And sold some meat sticks. Had some people reach out, started forming relationships. I was like, you know what? I think there's something here. And so that was that aha moment. And I kind of ran off to the races for that brand. And then eventually, as I'm sure we can talk more about, it became its own mission and its own coaching company.
Awesome. So in Seven Figure Leap, are you guys working with one particular niche, or is it really anyone who's looking to kind of boost their visibility? Who do you guys work with?
Yeah, like almost all of our clients would identify as a coach, consultant, or agency owner. So those are sort of the big buckets. We like to say we work with mission-driven entrepreneurs. So we're typically working with the founder, with an entrepreneur. Mission-driven basically meaning there is a bigger impact that this person is trying to have in the world. Almost always it's tied to their own origin story, their own, own transformation. And because of that, they have an amazing asset, meaning their story, that informs how they coach and teach and fulfill services for others. So that's still pretty broad because we have marriage coaches and executive consultants and email marketing experts. So it's still pretty broad, but mostly it's like solopreneur, small team, founder-led companies that have a story to tell, and they believe in the power of education as marketing.
100%. Love it. Love it. So, we help people launch podcasts to build referral networks, and you're helping them get on other shows. From your perspective, what is the biggest advantage of just guesting as opposed to having your own pod?
It's way easier, unless you have an amazing, production partner like maybe Will can talk about. But the big things in contrasting like guesting versus hosting. I mean, I'll say at the end of the day, I think you should have both. I do have my own podcast. I didn't have that until 3.5 years into this journey, mostly because it didn't make sense for the Meat Stick brand. And then when I got over into this coaching business, I just spent the first 2 years head down building. So I've had my own podcast in this space for about 18 months. And then I had about 18 months where I was only a guest. And so I now do both. All that said, I think with guesting, you can go hop onto other people's platforms that already have a following. They already have expertise. They already have a trusted audience. They're already doing all the production work, and you can literally show up for 30 minutes, kind of do your thing and leave. And so it's easier. It is also a really valuable tool in the sense that you can practice a repeated message, right? So if you have your own show, you got to talk about some unique things every time. But if you go on other people's shows, and this maybe starts to sound boring, it's actually super useful. It's like you get on and kind of deliver the same core message over and over in different forms for different audiences. You get really good at telling your story and messaging. So I think that's a huge advantage. And then the final one I'll throw in, there's a lot of them, but I feel like it is just super powerful, loaded way to build relationships at scale. And I know hosting can be as well, as you shared. On the guesting side, you imagine every show you're on, if you do it right, you're building a relationship with the host, the audience. And then part of what we do is we help people leverage the network of other guests that have been on that show. So there's a lot of like relationship capital to mine and serve and grow your network really quickly as a guest. And the other side of that coin is a lot of the same stuff's true for hosting. It's just different, right? It's just a slightly different strategy, but a lot of the same mindset applies to both.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And the guys that we work with that we're producing podcasts for, we're constantly telling them, hey, you need to get on podcast as well.
Yes.
You've got to appear. You can't just host. You got to go out there and put yourself out there. So what you're saying is music to my ears. 100%. So I've read that you say that podcasting builds trust at scale.
Yes.
So what do you think it is about the podcast medium that creates such a deep connection with the people who listen to them? I have, my batch of, it's probably like 25 podcasts at this point that I am listening to every single week.
Yep.
All different kinds of topics. But I'm connected to those people that host those shows. So what is it about podcasting that you think it creates that connection so strongly?
Yeah, there's numerous factors here. I'd say sort of the scientific side, it's, for one, the medium of consumption. The vast majority of the time when you're listening to a podcast, you literally put earbuds in your ears. It gets really close to your brain. You're often doing it in sort of a semi-hypnotic state where you're walking, running, cutting the lawn, whatever.
You're laundry, yeah.
You're in this mode of consumption that's really unique. Like you're not even necessarily like conscious, which actually, I don't know. There's neuroscience behind why this form is addictive in a healthy way. I'd say in the hosting guesting sort of format, which is different than like true crime or a solo, but in the types of podcasts we're talking about, it's a human to human conversation that's very heavily story based. And so this idea, it's like I'm certified in like story brand marketing, and human brains are wired for story, right? And so like if you want to retain information or retrieve information, stories are kind of like the PDF files in your brain.
Yeah.
And so it's the very nature of the fact that you're hearing someone's story or you're hearing them use case studies or other people's stories. It makes it very deeply embedded into your memory, and you can retrieve it and you can relate to it, and there's empathy and there's nuance, and there's a lot of this sort of like squishy soft stuff around why podcasting as a medium. It's basically like the most primal version of human connection, of standing around a campfire telling stories, and that you're doing that through modern technology, and you're doing it in a form and fashion that is kind of wired right to the parts of your brain that make you want to keep doing it and make you want to actually know, like, and trust the people that you're hearing. So that's, I would say, the sort of like scientific, physical side of this. So.
No, that's cool. I guess the way I always, I have friends who they know I like podcasts a lot, listen to a lot, and I'm like, wow, I can't get into podcasting. Why do you like it so much? What I always tell them is, I feel like if I'm listening to a show and I'll listen to it for a couple of months, and let's say they're doing episodes every week. By 8 episodes in, I feel like I know these people. I almost feel like they're kind of my friends, right? They don't know who I am, but it's a familiar voice. Like you said, I know this. I know what kind of stories they're going to be telling. It resonates with me. Their style resonates with me, and it's just kind of a comfort thing. It's like, and I'm going to get knowledge out of it. I'm going to learn something, whether it's about fantasy football or whether it's about mindset or whether it's whatever it might be about. But I'm getting something good from it. But there's that. The relationship building goes beyond just the guests and the host. It goes, that audience is also developing a relationship with the people who are on that show and looking forward. I guess
like
that
intimacy, and not like, it doesn't, I'm not talking like sexual intimacy. Like there's an intimacy that develops when you repeatedly hear another human talk, share stories, the nuance, the idiosyncrasies, the personality quirks. And so you get this relationship with the host. And what's cool as a guest, and focusing on that side so much, a good host transfers that trust to their guests. So even if it's the first time maybe you've heard this guest on this show, there's like there's a lot of psychological safety in the fact that you're like, this person's cool, I can trust them because Will thinks they're cool and I trust him. Right. And so you can build that likability and that connection really quickly, because there's this transfer of trust that happens in sort of this triangle that we build between listener, host, and guest.
Right. 100%. So coming on podcasts, guesting on podcasts, hosting podcasts, that's all great. And starting a relationship with somebody through a podcast, it's fantastic. But in order for that relationship to flourish, other things have to happen after the podcast happens. Yes. So how are you helping clients turn podcast appearances into leads, referrals, and revenue? Like what are the steps beyond appearing on the show, or are there things that you guys are doing beyond that showing up and talking for 20 or 30 minutes?
Yeah, 100%. So just to give this sort of context on what takes the most priority. When we work with people, we typically have them in a 90-day container, right? And so the first 30 days is the stuff people probably would expect if they're listening. It's like dialing in your messaging, finding the right podcast, pitching and getting you on the podcast, and then performing. Like coaching people up on how to be an effective guest.
I was going to ask that. Great.
30 days and then 60 days. So actually the vast majority, 2/3 of the time that we spend with a client is what happens after that. Right. And so how do you leverage each of these podcast appearances to actually grow your business? Because again, as I opened with earlier, while there's lots of reasons to do podcasts, we work with entrepreneurs. And so we're working with people who want to grow their business as a result of the energy and time that they're devoting as a podcast guest. Right. So to answer your question, the first 30-day part is important. Telling the right shows on the right stories is important, or the right stories on the right shows is important. And then having a clear call to action is where this bridge starts to really happen. So if you get to the end of an interview, you've done a good job, people are really into your story, they've learned from you, they're connecting to you, and they're naturally thinking, what's next? Like, I really want to know more about what this person shared. You give them a clear call to action. And so that is sort of the bridge into this profit part, or the 60-day part that I'm talking about. So clear call to action is typically going to be, a free piece of value. So if you're in marketing circles, we might call this a lead magnet or a client magnet. Right. So, lots of different options there, but you're pulling people over onto your email list where you can continue to build that relationship, educate them, let them go deeper into your world, Depending on your sales mechanism, this is where they may want to book a call with you, talk about your coaching program, or hire you for a consulting gig. So from the end of the podcast until the time they actually, pay you money for your higher ticket service, that is basically, a sales funnel. I like to think of it more in terms of a sales flywheel, where we bring people in and kind of thinking about this in a full circle. It's like you do the interview, they come over to your world, they raise their hand virtually and say, I'd like to know more about this. They get on your email list. Maybe you have an immediate option to book a call or sell something depending on your business model. And then, from there, we're not just talking. That's sort of the listener part of this, is like, get on your email list and buy stuff, which is where most people think about this sort of process ending. That's kind of where it starts, because then we're talking about, how do we go deeper with our relationship with this host? Are there ways we could serve them and their audience in a deeper way, like do workshops or have a more featured educational experience? The other guests, like I kind of alluded to earlier, we have a very intentional process where if I'm on a show and it makes sense, we're going to probably be reaching out to each of the guests on that show in a very serve first manner, just to connect with them and see if there's potential for, yes, clients, but partnerships. Do they have platforms that we could be featured on and serve them? And then we get into sort of the bottom of the flywheel, content repurposing, building your authority, and all of these things that we just talked about make the next pitch to the next podcast easier and probably a bigger podcast. And so that's when I say a flywheel, it's kind of like a closed loop, where every time we kind of complete this loop, this process, it gets bigger and better and bigger and better. And it kind of builds its own momentum and energy. So that's the best way I could probably describe in 2 minutes.
It makes perfect sense to me.
Podcast,
Yeah, because I mean, that's the world we're in, and we find the same thing in reverse, right? When we're producing a podcast for people, you start out with whenever someone's coming, and we work with a lot of attorneys, and we tell them, hey, first 6 episodes, invite 6 people that you know well. You already know them. Let's get them on. It's going to be an easier conversation. You're not talking to somebody cold. And then the podcast gets established. It's a real thing. Episodes are out. Then you can start reaching out to some other people that are maybe a little higher up. And the longer you do it, the more guests you have, the easier it becomes to book those higher level people that maybe have a bigger following to kind of build it out. So works very much in reverse, the same way, which is great to hear. It's validating to hear that. So that's cool that you guys had that follow-up procedure in place. I'm curious about the development process, that 30-day period. Are you guys doing mock podcasts with these guys to kind of give them reps? Is that part of the process?
It is. Yeah. So in order, it's messaging, getting really clear in your target market, and client transformation to words, right? That's step 1. We call that purpose. Step 2 is plan, which is just finding the right shows. Step 3 is pitch, which is getting on the shows. And then step 4, what you just described, we call it perform. It's basically, how do you become an effective guest? And so part of that's like structural. It's like, how do you introduce yourself? What are the stories you want to tell? What is the call to action? And then part of that is more the art side. Like, how do you feel comfortable doing an impromptu conversation? What happens when the host asks you something weird, or what happens when your dog starts barking? There's these things that happen in a live conversation that you get better with some reps. So yeah, absolutely. Part of what we do is mock interviews. And we put people in breakout rooms virtually and let them practice with each other. Like, introduce yourself as if you're starting a show. You introduce yourself, practice your call to action, tell each other one story. And we've got some, we kind of templated everything out. So we kind of got like go-to story formats, and like they're personalized to every individual,
right?
But we give them the prompts to make this as easy as possible to have very effective flows to the interviews.
Okay, so you just mentioned people might throw a question at you that you're not really prepared for, or go off script a little bit. I'm about to go off script because I'm gonna get a little bit inside baseball, because I'm gonna be honest, not everybody should host a podcast.
Yeah, not everybody should be a guest either.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, is because we've had people come in, right, that I want to start a podcast. I get the message, I get the methodology you guys have created. I see how it can make me business, and then we do episodes, and it's just like, this is so bad. This is so boring. You have no personality. And, we can continue to take that person's money But just like, I think be better served kind of figuring out a better angle for you for how to present yourself.
Yes.
And podcasting may not be for you. Do you guys run across that with people that come in where it's maybe you get, maybe you don't? I'm just kind of curious though, if you ever come across where you're just like, oof, we can't put this person on podcasts. I don't need names. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not looking for
Dude,
names
I'm
or
glad you
anything,
brought
but
this up.
I'm just kind of curious if that's something you guys have run across, and what do you do in a situation like that where it's hard to tell somebody like this ain't for you, man.
Yeah.
So tell me a story.
We screen for this. So,
Okay.
our program is, it's a higher ticket investment. I'm working with people personally. And so part of the process of coming into our world, we cap every group at 12. So part of how we address this is like, you can't just sign up and join a group. You have
Okay.
to apply, and then we have a conversation, and we also have an ROI guarantee. So it's very double-sided in the sense that you need to really think this is great for you, and we really need to believe it's good for you, that I think it's good for you, because I'm going to back it up with an ROI guarantee. And plus, there's a sense that we sort of endorse our clients, and so if they
It's got to be
start
good
going,
for the host too, because if
yeah,
you're sending them bad guests, they're
yeah,
not going to take guests from you anymore, right?
yeah, you go out and have someone who's
I call
rude
them I
or
call them I call them dead fish is what I call them.
there you go. Yeah, that's probably the more common. So, but a few ways this has come up. So there have been several people who get into the program because they are articulate, they speak at conferences, they are truly experts at what they do. We get into like step 4, and we're like, hey, cool. By the way, did you send the pitch last week that you're supposed to send it to 3 podcasts? And they say, I did not. And I'm like, why? Like, you're a genius. Like, this is a great pitch. They're like, I'm afraid they're going to say yes. And so we get into these weird sort of mindset things where it's not a personality or capability. It's literally like this limiting belief of, well, I can speak in front of a crowd from notes. This idea of an impromptu conversation scares the hell out of me, and I don't know if I can do it. And that's where we started introducing these sort of mock interviews and
Right.
helping people through that. So there is like that, but basically people don't kind of get in the front door if they're abrasive, rude, a cold fish, as you said, or if they're really not an expert. Like, the people we work with are actually experts at the stuff they do, and they're attracted to us because of the idea that, what if my marketing was teaching and coaching people? Like, I love doing that, and if that could be my marketing, wow, that would be awesome. That's kind of our core promise. So 95% of the time, we're already attracting people who they know what podcasting is. They've probably done some of it. They just haven't done it very systematically.
Yeah.
But even if it's their first time on a podcast, they can talk, they can teach, they've done presentations and stuff like that. But I love the question, and we do get it. We do get that, but in a kind of a nuanced way. So
yeah, I think that's what you're talking about there is, I think, something that is vastly undersold in what we do, and that is the personal growth aspect
absolutely.
of either hosting your own show or being a guest on shows, because it's so much of getting out of your comfort zone and putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. The beauty of podcasting is, like what I just did to you. You don't know what kind of questions going to get thrown at you necessarily every time. You might have a list of questions like, hey, this is the kind of stuff I want to talk about, but based on how the conversation goes and go any which way, you're on a podcast, it's being recorded, that question gets asked to you, you got to answer it.
Yeah.
And so, it makes you better at answering questions. It makes you a better listener. So, and it helps you kind of overcome that imposter syndrome that so many people have. So that's my favorite thing about that, is seeing that change in people on either side, whether they're hosting or whether they're guesting. You see that growth, and it happens pretty quick, right?
Oh,
At least for hosts, within a couple of months, they got their groove, and they're just like, this is my show and I'm doing my thing, and it goes so well. It's such a powerful tool on so many levels. Yes, it can build relationships and get you business in the door, but that personal growth side, I think is undersold. And it's hard to sell that to people, right? So if you can tell them, like, yeah, we're going to help you build your business, but after a few months, they're like, man, I feel great. I'm confident. I can talk to anybody about anything.
Yeah.
There's no curveballs that I can't hit at this point. So I love that.
Makes you more confident, makes you a better teacher, makes you more, it makes you develop the muscle of thinking on your feet and
Mhm.
being empathetic to people, and because there's also bad hosts, right? And so you get into a situation, not bad, but you get in a situation where it's like you're a guest and this person is unfocused or they're having a bad day or whatever. Like you also have agency as a guest to still get your point across, right? And like you don't need to be as polished, and maybe you never want to be as like a politician, but politicians that have been in the arena for a while, one of the reasons they're so polished in media interviews is so many reps,
They've done it a lot. Yeah.
you're getting a lot of reps in both as a host and a guest. And yeah, I said this earlier, like there's no better tool for dialing in your messaging than repeatedly being asked about what you do. And we just don't get that in a natural setting. So putting
Right.
yourself in the situation of either hosting or guesting, 100% agree.
Love it. You mentioned part of what you guys are doing is picking the right shows.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about what goes into that and how you find the right kind of show for the right client, the right guest. Because on our end, I'm always trying to find guests for our hosts, and I got to find somebody that makes sense to be on their show. I can find a guest. I can fill up the pipeline easy, but they got to make sense.
Yes. Yeah. There's, I'd say the one key framework that we can share here pretty quickly that anyone listening will probably get some light bulb moments is about topic selection, right? And so you've got the thing that you do as a coach or consultant or service provider, you're an attorney or a doctor or whatever. Like there's a thing that if you put it in a circle, you're like, this is the thing I do pretty much all day. Like this is my core thing. The mistake most people make when they're wanting to be a guest is they're like, I want to go be on shows that do my core thing as their core thing. And there's just too much overlap, right? And so we want to find overlap, but not too much overlap. And so a real simple framework, I'll just use like marriage coaching as an example. I've got some marriage coaches in my community, and that was an industry that I served for a while. So if I'm a marriage coach, what I don't want to do is go be on a bunch of podcasts that are hosted by marriage coaches because it's redundant. We'll probably actually conflict with some of our advice. So where do you go to answer your question, Will? Well, I like to think upstream and downstream of the core problem. So what causes the problem you solve? So what are the triggers that make people want the thing you have? And then the other question would be, what happens as a result of the thing that you solve? So what are symptoms? So like triggers and symptoms. So if I'm a marriage coach, a trigger could be having a kid for the first time or being an empty nester for the first time. There's these life events that inevitably cause some people to have communication problems in their marriage. So if I'm a marriage coach, I can go be on a bunch of parenting podcasts, talk about these challenges, and I'm the resident expert in that, whereas most of the people they interview are doctors and nutritionists and breastfeeding and sleep experts and all this stuff, right? And then on the other side, downstream or the symptoms, if I'm helping people with marriage problems, maybe I go be on a personal finance podcast and I talk about the need for couples and partners to communicate about money, set dreams together, all these things that are a little peripheral to the core thing that host probably does, which is financial planning or, CPA work, that kind of stuff. And so I can be a guest expert. So that's really the mindset. How can you be a guest expert in a related topic that's not 100% the exact same thing that you do? Because you're probably going to find a lot of redundancy if you do what most people do, which is try to get two in the same circle.
Yeah, connective tissue is what we're always looking for. Is you got to find that connective tissue so that it makes sense, but it doesn't have to be. And yeah, you don't like when we work with a lot of personal injury lawyers, and they have podcasts that are not about personal injury law because nobody in their right mind is going to listen to a podcast about personal injury law. But we're always trying to find people that can come on where there's some kind of connective tissue to what they do or whatever the theme of that particular podcast might be.
In my former career before I got into this whole business entrepreneurial world, I was a traffic engineer. So like having a traffic engineer come on a personal injury, that would make a perfect sense.
100%.
What do you think about when you're designing a road? What sort of things have you seen as, that would be really interesting. And if I was a traffic engineer that was out on my own doing consulting, I definitely want a relationship with trial attorneys because they can hire me as an expert witness.
100%.
So just as a real-time example of how these things, seemingly two different careers or, shoulders, connect through the connective industry to like be a really good partnership.
Yep, absolutely. So last question for you here, Dustin. When you look ahead, how do you see podcast guesting evolving as a part of a business owner's growth strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of bigger picture, ethereally, I think it is actually going to grow in impact and importance in an age of AI. There are already sort of like cloned AI to AI audio podcasts. They suck.
I can't stand them myself.
But so that's always going to like be a thing. But I think the where I'm very bullish on this is people crave story, people crave community, people want human to human connection. They want stuff that's real. And people are going to continue to consume podcasts for sure. And if you're someone who is an expert, I don't know of a better way to showcase that expertise than long form educational content. And this is, I mean, there's other forms of that, like long form educational YouTube content, which is awesome. It's a lot harder to do. This is a lot easier to do, a lot more fun, in my opinion, and a lot more repeatable. And so I think if that is your business, like the people we serve, you're like, hey, I'm an expert. I know my stuff. I love to teach and coach. I just see this as being a very much a growth path leading into the future, and probably more and more so as AI slop sort of takes over some of the other marketing channels like social media and kind of general content. Yeah,
I agree with you. The human connection thing is something that's always going to be needed and desired, and podcasting really provides that. All the way across the board. Dustin, this has been a fantastic conversation. I love how much we are on the same page about things, even though we're kind of approaching it from different sides. But I love what you guys are doing. I think I need to talk to you more about how I can get some of your folks on some of the pods we're producing. For sure. Because like I said, we're digging for guests is always something that we're doing. Before we wrap it up here, Dustin, let people know how they can find you, how they can get in touch with 7 Figure Leap. We do have a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of consultants and fractional C-level people that watch and listen to the show. So let people know how they can find you and get in touch.
Perfect. Yeah. So real simple on our end, 7figureleap.com is the brand. And if you go to 7figureleap.com/start, it's going to put you on a page to access our podcast guesting playbook. So if you've listened to this, you're like, this like process Dustin talked about is interesting. I'd like to like try this. I want to go through this framework and find some shows that I think would be a good fit. Our model is give it all away for free. And then if you want help running it, being in a cohort to implement it, and you want my personal assistance, that's what people pay for. So if you go to 7figureleap.com/start, you can kind of get the whole playbook for free. And at the very least, you're going to figure out if this seems like a good strategy for you and your business.
Awesome, man. Yeah, do it. If you want to get on shows and get yourself out there, contact Dustin and 7 Figure Leap and get it going. If you are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast on the live stream right now, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching the recorded version on YouTube, we obviously or on Spotify, listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're getting your podcast, we appreciate you tuning in. We have more episodes coming every day this week. I think I've got 8 more episodes to record this week. So I will see you all several times. Dustin, thanks again for popping in. Really appreciate it. And we'll see all the rest of you next time tomorrow on another episode of Partnership for Profits.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.